Next up, I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Karen Landman. She's a professor emerita in the School of Environmental Design and Rural Development at the University of Guelph and has a great deal of background both in landscape design as well as working in the academic and teaching spaces on designing urban food systems. So I'll pass it over to you, Karen, and thank you.
Thank you, Emma. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm talking about urban agriculture and have studied this for a couple of decades now. I grew up on a dairy farm in southern Ontario, and when I told my father I was looking at urban agriculture, he was a bit baffled. What do you mean? And I told him it's essentially growing food on a larger scale than, say, a backyard garden for local consumption. And he felt, well, that just makes sense. Growing food in the city on a commercial scale is not new, but it was largely pushed out of the urban environment after the Second World War, and housing moving in onto these sites changed the landscape significantly, and we've largely lost memory of urban agriculture. Next slide, please. So an example is Oakville. Oakville was once known as the strawberry capital of Canada, or as they called it at the time, the strawberry capital of the Dominion. It was first introduced commercially in Oakville after the mid-1800s by John Cross, who owned a farm north of the railway on what is now known as Cross Avenue. And the fruit was taken by train into the city. Oakville is a short distance from Toronto. It would be west of Toronto. Very much within the GTA population now, but at the time you could take the strawberry fruit into Toronto by train, and you could also take it by passenger boats from the lakefront in Oakville down to the bottom of Yonge Street and then up to the Toronto markets. And this resulted in other businesses. Eventually, strawberry production started to be exported internationally. And an example of a side business was the Oakville Basket Factory, opened in 1871, that created the baskets for shipping the fruit. Post Second World War, these farm fields were largely bulldozed for housing as soldiers came home and started families, and the baby boom started happening, of which I'm a part. This all changed in southern Ontario along the lakefront. Next, please. So that red dot in the center, that's Cross Avenue now. So just as an example to show you that the hardscape that has moved in, massive concrete, asphalt, covering what had been very productive soils in the past. Next slide. And in response to the loss of farmland, they say some of the most productive farmland can be seen or could be seen from the top of the CN Tower. Is largely paved over urban landscape now. But there are people who are working to slow the loss of farmland in southern Ontario. In Ontario, we lose 319 acres per day, every day, to development. And one organization is the Ontario Farmland Trust. They were organized in 2002, a group of people who had concerns about this. The OFT then incorporated in 2004, and they've been active ever since. Next slide. So the OFT's mission is to protect and preserve Ontario farmlands and associated agricultural, natural, and cultural landscapes of food production for the benefit of Ontarians today and future generations. And this is a very difficult mission. It's formidable to stand in the way of development, especially in southern Ontario. So the park, the trust is there to influence policy and advise federal and provincial governments do their best to inform farm owners about the OFT and the opportunity to work with the OFT to preserve farmland. A recent project the OFT was involved in was the Rouge National Urban Park in Toronto. So this is the watershed of the Rouge River, which runs down through the eastern part of the city. And over time, this watershed has become recognized by the federal government as a national park system. It has recently expanded to include what had been the proposed Pickering Airport, which had never developed over decades of waiting for that airport, and so that land is now added to the national park. And the headquarters for the national park is, of all places, in Scarborough, Ontario. Next slide, please. So a part of working with the Ontario Farmland Trust, I work with landscape architecture students. I teach in a design school, which is oddly within the Ontario Agriculture College at the University of Guelph. And I'm often asked by people out there to help them with a urban agriculture or food production project. This is a project at the high school just north of Guelph at the Fergus High School, where they have a food school. So they have a chef who teaches grades 9 to 11, I believe, on food skills, and they run a cafeteria that parallels the school's cafeteria, and they're very successful in the work that they're doing in that cafeteria. He asked me to help them design a small urban farm next to the school so that the students could learn how to grow food as well. And I brought my master's class. Here you can see I had 2 master's students tied to 2 high school students, and they worked together to discuss what they might want for the site. So what behaviors do you want to see? What activities do you want to see? And they worked on a visioning workshop to develop that farm. Next slide, please. I also work with students who do their thesis work on food landscapes. This is a thesis that was a result of Liz Nowichin doing research on school food gardens, and she read the academic literature. She interviewed people who were part of very successful food gardens, and visited a number of successful food gardens. The outcome of her thesis was to create 52 guidelines for school food garden design. Next slide, please. And she developed through her work summary of motivation and benefits. So here you can see the motivation to enhance academic curriculum for the students in the schoolyard, to instill a connection with nature and environmental stewardship for the students, to provide education and practice of sustainable agriculture, food systems, and food literacy. This is really important for health of children, to understand food literacy, food nutrition value, and so on, and health, to promote a healthy lifestyle and nutrition. Next, please. And further motivations or practical skills, so students developing skills related to growing food and processing food, and learning about food that is healthy and nutritious, and also community engagement, because these school food gardens are often connected out into the broader community. Next slide, please. So here's Liz herself. She created some lovely drawings for her school food gardens. She had 52 guidelines. I won't go through them all, obviously, but one of the categories, the first category she had, was visioning, planning, and design. Number 1 being use goals and objectives to guide the design. So establish that before you build anything. And in 2008, I think I went on an urban agriculture road tour through the United States and through Canada, looking at projects. And I was always amazed how, when I talked to people, they clearly hadn't sorted out what their goals were. So this was the primary recommendation in her guidelines. And again, this document is online, and there are 52 guidelines in all. Next, please. Another project I was involved in was what is now the McQuestion Urban Farm. And I was contacted by the dean of the college, who had been contacted by a woman in Hamilton, who was part of a neighborhood association. And she thought, we would like to start a farm here. Who should we ask to help us? And who else but the Ontario Agriculture College? And so the dean contacted me in the design school and said, this is an urban farm, that this might be up your alley. So I organized my students into developing a visioning workshop with the neighborhood association. We brought in professional growers, we brought in city staff, and ran a very successful visioning workshop with them as to what this could be for the city. So the city planners, the director of planning was at the workshop, and she said, we're going to make this happen, but we also need to make policy so that this sort of thing can happen right across the city. And so they set to work to do that. In the meantime, the city planners conducted site and soils analysis. They looked at past aerial photos and so on to try to understand the site so that they could understand whether there was any contaminated soils. The city was really pleased with the proposal that we generated, that they hired a landscape architecture firm to come up with the final design. We also convinced the city that you need a real farmer. This is not personal private gardening we're talking about. We're talking about real food production. Next slide. So this has evolved over the years. It is now, they have a great website, the McQuestion Urban Farm. It's in the McQuestion neighborhood. It has evolved into the Niwasa Kendiswin Teg, if I pronounce that correctly, project. It was initially run by the city. They had programming. They had hired a part-time farmer who was very interested also in social enterprise. And they had day camps for the students. There are schools around this site, and they also had a lot of volunteers come and help growing food, harvesting the food. They have a farmer's market. People can buy it. This is a low-income neighborhood. People can buy food at a lower price. Next slide, please. So this is posted at the site. Along the bottom there, you can see the proposal from the landscape architecture firm that was hired. The St. Helens Center is a community center. There are a lot of meetings happening there for the neighborhood. And you can see that long rectangular line of green. That was the site. The site was about 7 acres, is about 7 acres big. It was used as a airport runway for training pilots during the Second World War. And so that site had remained this long rectangular lawn ever since then. The only people going onto it was the fellow on the mowing machine to mow the grass. And the people around the site, who were part of the neighborhood association that contacted University of Guelph, wanted to grow food. A lot of new immigrants who had food growing skills, but they just didn't have land. And this is often the challenge for urban agriculture, is to find plots of arable land. So the city, of course, checked that there were no issues with soil contamination, and they set to work to build this project. You can see on the left there, Melvin Avenue and Sumac. At the corner there is the 7-Eleven, which is the most profitable 7-Eleven store, variety store in the city, because a lot of people were buying their food there. So you can imagine the poor diet that they had as a consequence. Next slide. So this is what it looked like. You can see the 7-Eleven on the horizon there in the middle. This is what that land looked like. It simply was mowed with a path alongside. Next slide. And a couple years later, this is what it looked like. And in the distance, you can see the wooden structures that were built for programming and signage. The tent that's up there was for a ribbon cutting ceremony. So everyone who was involved in the project came to open the site. Next, please. So they have Hamilton's Edible Education Guide that is part of this project, and they do all sorts of programming for children, particularly primary school children, but also some high school students that are nearby. Next, please. Just an example of the goals of the Ontario Edible Education Network, of which this is a part: access to food, developing skills for children, but also developing knowledge for children about food. Next, please. And this site is connected to the peri-urban farms. There are a lot of farms near Hamilton, very rich soil, and they connect out. They actually have farmers who come into the urban agriculture site to learn about the kind of production that they do there. The McQuestion's goals is to add economic value to the community as well. So they do train young people who then can potentially go out into the peri-urban landscape and work in the agriculture sector. And as of April 1st, 2022, McQuestion Farm is now under the leadership of Niwasa Kendiswin Teg. As I said, it's still public land, but there is an agreement with the city on managing the site. Next, please. So another project I did with my students is rooftop food production. And so the students here are running a workshop for a site in downtown Guelph that wanted to create a food production center on top of the roof. And this was more about developing food literacy and helping people understand how to grow food, but not necessarily growing food for distribution from the roof. Next slide. And ultimately, after many iterations, this is the rooftop design for food production. There's a greenhouse there on the left and some green areas with a lot of room available for community to get together on the rooftop and learn about food in various ways. Next, please. So I've written with students also on published on a project we took on with getting urban agriculture and local food language into the City of Guelph official plan. And the students developed about 94 points that could go into the official plan. And amazingly, the city adopted about a third of that and made urban agriculture an objective of the City of Guelph as well. Next, please. The Yorklands in Guelph is an old reformatory site. It was a jail for many years. It had a farm, and so the prisoners managed the farm and essentially fed themselves. This is owned by the province of Ontario, and the province is interested in the city buying the land and developing it, so it's become part of a secondary plan for the city. And I've worked with my students and the Yorklands Green Hub group on developing a plan for urban agriculture within the City of Guelph on this site. Next, please. Also working with a postdoc on evaluating community food hubs. We've gone to different food hubs to look at how they are networked. They're highly networked, typically. The Intervale Center there in the center is a long-standing urban agriculture. They have many sites there in the Intervale. It's the river valley and long-standing urban agriculture site. And we looked at all the organizations they're connected with, They are a nonprofit organization. All of the green you see there are the producers that are connected to this center that aggregates all of the food, but also manages a number of services. The Intervale Conservation Nursery there in the upper middle left, I guess, that was initially a composting facility that Intervale ran, and eventually they sold, and now the Conservation Nursery manages the composting for that. But you can see how highly complex these projects can be. The Community Food Hub can look pretty simple, but once you examine how much they are connected out into the community, they become quite complex. Next, please. And there are growers who are, like my father, single businessman, entrepreneur, Fresh City Farms here in Toronto, working in partnership with the city. They have access to arable land. They don't have to buy the land. That's a big challenge for an urban farmers to buy the land. You can imagine it's expensive. And there's a lot, because we've sprawled, there is pockets of arable soil. And so Fresh City Farms has been at it for quite a number of years, and they have gradually evolved into connecting with other urban farmers, and they aggregate their products into a CSA that goes out into the city. Next, please. And here's an example of some of the people that they're connected with. Next, please. So that's essentially a very quick overview. I didn't even get into talking about chickens, so that's a whole other story. But I'll leave it there for now, and I look forward to the Q&A period.